I was born in 1980. So here in America, I have all of the rights that feminists fought for as far as being able to drive, being able to wear my hair how I wanted to, the right to choose my religion. I have all of those rights. But let's be real. The rights that women fought for here in America, we're still literally in the teenage years as far as civil rights for women and civil rights for non-white people. So let's be real. So this article that I'm about to talk about, as far as Iran, they are in its infancy as far as attempting to get women and girls' rights in that country. So let's get into it. In September of last year, during what seemed a typical detention over an inadequate hijab, Mansa Amani, a young Kurdish woman visiting Tehran, was arrested and beaten. She subsequently died in custody. Two female journalists broke the story. They are now in prison. This is what caused the country to erupt into a basically a civil war that women and girls are leading. While no one could have predicted the flashpoint that would be a routine morality police arrest, it did not come as a complete surprise to me. Throughout my years of reporting on Iran and the wider Middle East, I have always kept a keen eye on the hidden power of the women. All this time, they've been quietly, strategically, slowly pulling at a literal thread in the fabric of the Islamic Republic regime, the hijab. Protests are not a new phenomenon in Iran, but this time is different. An unprecedented revolution led by women with the support from men. This is a spontaneous civil rights movement made up of people at their wits' end, unable to afford basic life necessities while forced to adhere to the oppressive rules of a religious autocracy that promised to take care of its people. What's more dangerous than a mob with nothing to lose? The politics of fear have been key to this, to the Islamic Republic of Iran's theocratic rulers hold on power for 43 years. Women are forced to cover their hair in hijab and bodies in loose clothing. They cannot dance publicly, cannot drive motorcycles, and cannot travel without parental or spousal approval, just to name a few restrictions. And just know that here in America, there was a time when women couldn't travel without men, when women couldn't do things without permission of their father or their spouse, because women were the property of either their father or their spouse. So women are at the mercy of the morality police's mood. And Masa's story was the last straw. Her being detained and unalived by these police basically sparked this flame. Part two is coming up. Okay, so let's continue about this repressive regime in Iran. One woman who lives in the southern part of Iran sent me a voice note on Instagram. A couple of months ago, she received a summons to go down to the police station. She was ordered to pay a hefty fine and her car would be impounded. Her crime? A traffic camera had caught her sitting behind the steering wheel of her car alone at a stoplight, with her hijab had fallen off her head. If it happened again, she'd be imprisoned. Let's think about that. This woman is alone, but she still has to follow these restrictive and repressive and oppressive rules. In the midst of this push pull, the regime missed a thread. They underestimated the emboldening of women who had already begun to ditch the hijab, even before Masa's death. The aging leaders who came to power during the Islamic Revolution are completely out of touch with Gen Z, who are truly the leaders of this revolt. What started out as protests against a compulsory hijab have evolved into calls for an end to the Islamic Republic itself, with shocking scenes of schoolgirls defiling images of the supreme leaders, the Ayatollah Khomeini and the Ayatollah Khomeini. Please forgive me in my pronunciations. The protests have now been going on for over 3 months, and the crackdown has been brutal. Hundreds killed, including children, over 10,000 arrested, reports of horrific abuse of sexual abuse of men, women, and minors in detention. Iranian officials dismissed a Newsweek report that said 15,000 arrested protesters faced execution as a result of the parliamentary vote in favor of the death penalty for them. After the story went viral on social media and shared by multiple prominent Western figures like Justin Trudeau, traditional media fact checked the report. And the correction read, a majority of the parliament supported a letter to the judiciary calling for harsh punishments of the protesters, which could include the death penalty. But in fact, the regime has begun executing protesters by hanging, and as is typical in Iran, despite the brutal crackdown, they're showing no signs of slowing down. I think this is a historic moment. I truly believe this is the first female led revolution of our time. And this is where I'm tired of people blaming everything on the West. The Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini has said the protests are not about the hijab and blamed the US and its allies for stoking unrest. He's blamed the anti government media for manipulating the minds of Iranians. And the regime has even gone as far as threatening punishment for anyone working for or speaking with the foreign press. The regime's gaslighting is not holding, however. And Bana 80 tells me that the opposition, whether inside the country or among the diaspora, all agree that no one is interested in interventionism. Change isn't coming, it's already here. Iranian women who don't want to cover their hair just aren't. The Islamic Republic has two options: continue to brutally crack down on its people, which only compounds the anger and frustration against the regime. Eventually, that's a losing battle for them. Or they can take another approach: abolish the morality police, give the women freedom to not wear a hijab, and introduce some kind of social reform movement inside Iran. But compulsory hijab is a pillar of the Islamic Republic. Without it, the foundation is broken. Religion is falling everywhere, it seems. The regime's source I spoke with acknowledged there needs to be dialogue. There needs to be reforms, that this generation is not like that of 1979. I do think the fabric of the future of Iran is a state that will be weaved by the people who have risked the most for a better future. So the women are really into it, but the next article that I'm just going to highlight quickly, the men are into it as well. This literally just hit. The images of an emaciated Iranian prisoner prompt outrage. Social media images purported to be an emaciated jail Iranian physician who went on a hunger strike in support of demonstrations against compulsory wearing of the hijab have caused outrage. Fahad Mesami, 53, who has been in jail since 2018 for supporting women activists protesting against headscarf policy, began his hunger strike October 7th to protest recent government killings of demonstrators. But the Iranian judiciary denied the hunger strike claim and said the photos had gone viral on social media were from 4 years ago when Mesami did go on a hunger strike. Y'all, these women, these school age girls, and the men that support them are serious about change. And what we are witnessing with our eyes are so many women who are fed up with the restrictions of the patriarchy, these autocracies, these theocracies that are leading with violence because they don't want women to have rights. And so, for the women here in the United States that take feminism for granted, that take all of our rights for granted, would you be willing to trade places with the regimes in the Middle East where women are literally marching just simply how they can wear their hair and to be able to drive and go places without men? These Iranian women and the men that support them, these stories need to be told because these women need support. Like, comment, share. Let's start this conversation.